the running story, at least what I've been telling you guys, is that, with the way that things are, our business inquiries have definitely dropped a bit. Now, my thought process was, well, the private party stuff is going to probably drop a little bit, but maybe we'll get some public dates, some municipal things, and, we should be fine. It's not that big of a deal. And what has started to show itself over the past few weeks, because, we're basically at the beginning of the summer season. So most of the outdoor concert series events have been announced, and, we've got a couple of things going, but the thing about being in an eras band is that there's a spot in most of these things. So if you're doing a summer concert series, there's going to be a slot for an 80s band.
Yeah. And
for a number of years, we were that slot. We filled that slot all over the place, all over the Southeast. And, in previous episodes, I've been pretty, honest with the fact, we're not the best 80s band in Atlanta, but we're in the top two. There's definitely bands that have more going for them than we do, and that's okay, because we're kind of doing this as a side business. It's not a full-time thing, and totally fine with that. Well, in the process of kind of letting it ride, there is another group that has started and has kind of usurped our spot in that pantheon, in the, whatever the hierarchy is of 80s bands in the Atlanta area. And they're fantastic. I have absolutely, there is no critique. They've got a lot of stuff going for them. One of them, there's some star power involved, at least locally. Well-known guitar player who is in some national acts that started this project as kind of like a side deal. They've got great resources. They've got management. They've got a lot going for them. And in that vacuum where we have kind of just been resting on our laurels, they were able to, jump the line. Okay. And no fault to them, but it became really apparent over the past couple of weeks. It's like, okay, well, we have kind of just been riding it out and just feeling like we're in a good position with our promo and that kind of thing, that we didn't really need to worry about it. And it's at the point now where we need to start worrying about it. So earlier today, somebody on the Patreon Slack ended up on one of our agency websites and found our promo. I was like, hey man, this is a great promo. And I was appreciative of that. But then I went and I looked at it, and we made that video, I think, in 2019. Well, it was released in 2019, which means we made it in 2018. And that was the last promo video we shot. So, we've been able to self-sustain ourselves, no paid ads, no representation, other than some partnerships with some agencies. We have been a fully self-propelled, word of mouth, cash positive business. Yeah. And I went back and I watched it, and it's a perfectly fine promo. There's nothing wrong with it, but I am fully clean shaven, which I have not been literally since 2018. And it is showing a version of the band that no longer exists. The lineup has changed considerably. Yep. The look has changed considerably. And I was like, okay, well, it seems like we need to look at what we are kind of projecting outwardly to the marketplace and what needs to be adjusted. And this is one of those things that I feel like every band needs to do on a regular basis. Yeah. Emotionally removed from the situation, what's your social media look like? What does your promo material look like? What does your calendar look like? Take all of the front-facing components of your brand and try to look at them from an unbiased perspective and look for opportunities and of things to change and where stuff needs to be updated or fixed. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Well, that's interesting. As you said that, I realized I've been in startup band mode for so many years in a row that I can't quite imagine having my sales and marketing and system just on autopilot. the way you describe it. It's unfathomable to me. I do have a question. When you say this band has taken your spot, what's your evidence? What are you looking at to know that?
Well, specifically looking at things like municipal public events. I'm looking in our local market. Every city's got one of these outdoor amphitheaters, and they do their summer concert series. And the first kind of inkling was that the venue that we played the year before, they were like, we're going to do a new thing. I had mentioned that in a past episode.
Yep.
And they went with this band. I was like, okay, that makes sense. And then I looked at another city that we had done that for, and they had also picked that band. And so I went and looked at their calendar, and basically for the next 3 months, their schedule is exclusively outdoor municipal concert series.
And you've formerly, in previous years, been in some or many or all of those?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's a really great way to build the name of the group out because,
for sure,
there's no barrier to entry. People are there to hear the music that they want to hear. You're just the thing providing it. But out of those things, a lot of leads come through, and it's ultimately, it's a good partnership to have. And there was a period of time where we were traveling a lot, in partnership with a lot of these agencies that, like, there are agencies in our area that do nothing but these events. And so by partnering with them, we were able to, pick up a lot of road dates and, play in front of a bunch of folks and, just kind of spread the word, which has been fantastic. And that has kind of slowed over the years. And I feel like it's primarily because it doesn't appear to them that we have anything new to offer.
Right.
Which is not true, but because we have rested on our laurels, we have not kind of kept our face and name in the forefront the way that we need to.
Yeah.
So what that looks like for me personally is 3 things really. So it looks like a repertoire thing, which kind of turns into like a show design thing.
Okay.
So more than just like what the songs that we're playing, like how are you presenting those songs? Like production things that we can add or other components that we can use to enhance the stuff that we're already playing. It looks like social media, which, I admittedly have not kept up with the way that I should. And it looks like promo material, putting some money behind getting a new video put together and focusing on that, intently. So between those 3 things, that's kind of what I feel like we need to spend the rest of the year focusing on.
I'm zeroing right in on the first one.
Okay.
Content. What differences do you see you want to make there?
As far as like the material goes, like there are just some songs that like we're not able to escape. Like we got to do them.
For sure.
So the thing that I feel like makes us unique in our market is the dynamic of the 2 vocalists, which of course are me and my wife.
Right.
So what can we do to enhance that performance? We're really proud of the moments that we've organically generated in some of them. Well, how do we add to that? How do we take songs that we aren't necessarily doing something like that and make it happen? I've thought about, what it would look like if we added another guitar player so I didn't have to play guitar at all. What would that look like on stage where you had 2 lead vocalists that were unencumbered,
Yes.
What could you add show-wise with that kind of lineup? And not to toot my own horn, but I have a show choir background. Like we could put together
do some stuff,
some pretty snappy choreography. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that's a thing. Choreography is not really a thing most bands do, right? But it adds something. It's an additional thing,
So there's that, it's the lighting, of course, we've been working on that intently.
Yes.
Speaking of which, I've been teasing this both lighting review. Well, guess what? It's in the can.
Sweet.
Finished it. So it'll be out in the next week or so. But beyond that, like it's video. Like what kind of video component could we add? I did get one of those inflatable screens. Could we implement that in certain situations? If we're playing in front of an LED wall, could we put the music videos or some sort of cool visuals behind us? Like, could we put the show more on rails where in between songs there are interludes that include, stuff that we're not doing right now. It's basically like thinking about this as a production. If this is something that like you're selling to the marketplace, like what does that package look like? How could you make it more appealing? And it's really about finding the unique value prop that this lineup can offer in comparison to the other groups in the marketplace.
Yes, that was, you took the term right out of my head. As a product manager, USPs, we call it unique selling proposition. What is it that you uniquely offer that nobody else does? And you're spitballing some good things. I think you're headed down the right idea path here.
Yeah, so beyond that, it's looking at other songs that we haven't added. I've definitely thought about, this kind of dovetails into the whole social media thing. There's been this kind of idea rolling around in my head about doing some YouTube content or some video content that we could put out on other platforms about songs that we can't do. So like doing cover versions of songs that we wouldn't play. So, top of that list, Satisfied by Richard Marx.
100%. Number two, Dead Man's Party.
Yep. That would be another one. Just songs that don't necessarily like hit live.
Yeah.
Head over heels. Like we were talking about a couple of episodes ago. Yep. So thinking about songs that like didn't necessarily make the cut, but like we absolutely love. So, or like guilty pleasure songs. I think it's kind of funny to take the concept of an 80s band and then like take an 80s song that you consider a guilty pleasure and you're in the freaking 80s band. Like
right.
how deep can you go?
Yeah. Yeah.
So that seems like something that I would enjoy kind of like digging into.
I like that because it's, I think the perception is like, the thing about 80s songs is they're not making any more of them, right? It's like finite. But the reality is that's true, but it's big finite. Like there's a lot. And so to kind of break that down and say, I love this song, you'd never want to see me do it live, and then do a cover of it in a video and cut it down, not have it, people have to sit through it or something. But I think that's a fun idea.
But beyond that, I feel like it shows the general public that this isn't just like a gimmick or a shtick. You actually are a student of this era.
Yeah.
And you love it to a degree that they love it too.
Right.
Where even if you never play that song live, it was worth the effort just to put it out into, the ether.
For sure.
Just to prove that, you could do it.
For sure.
Or just to do it for your own, satisfaction.
Yeah. And as one of the things I learned from Mike Schulte recently on the Slack is like rerun that video every 9 months, right? It's
why not?
Yeah. Nobody's going to complain if they see it again. You see stuff repeatedly on social media all the time. Nobody's going to notice that. But the thought that like it's a lot of effort for one video that's going to post once, that's a fallacy.
Yeah. It's funny you mentioned that. I had some video I made in like 2022 that came back up or was like, hey, you posted this a year ago and you posted it the year before that, whatever. And it's literally like, it's an 8-second video. And I posted it and 100,000 views just like that.
There you go.
If it works, it works. No need to overthink it. So moving into the content stuff, we have got to be better about posting to the socials. And it seems pretty simple when you think about it. All you need to do is put stuff out that reminds people that you exist, shows stuff that you've done that's cool, is in the ether of the whatever it is that you're covering, and builds engagement. The challenge is the discipline to be able to do it consistently. And at this point, between 5 bands, 2 podcasts, and just whatever, I'm not the person to do it, unfortunately. So I've had this conversation with a couple of people in the band already, kind of talking about what we need to prioritize. And actually, a year or so ago, Moskowitz sent you and I the band leader like spreadsheet that kind of breaks down all of the tasks and all of that stuff.
Yeah.
So in our next kind of get together, I want to pull that out and be like, these are the things that we need to do in order to be like operational, like on the ball, like success oriented. What of these things can you do? So I've already hit up somebody in the group about taking over on socials. they seemed game to do it. It's just a matter of giving them access to the tools that they need and the resources that, they could use to do that, and showing them basically how to schedule them and all of that stuff. I think it's pretty feasible for one person to do, as long as that's the thing that they're supposed to do,
right?
And not the, 20,000 other things that have to happen beyond that.
And how do you feel about, if it were me, I would have some control jangle.
Trepidation?
Going on about that. Yeah, something.
At this point, I feel like I've got blind spots
Okay.
around this stuff, because it is very easy for the person who has been in charge of everything up to this point to see it objectively.
For sure. Okay.
What I see as cool is probably not the right benchmark.
Yeah.
It would be really cool to have somebody who is in the inner circle, but coming at it from an outside perspective to share those things.
Yeah, that's certainly true. I completely get that. The other thing, of course, is, the times when I have been failing at something and unwilling to give it over to someone else because of some feeling of losing control. The reality is, like, I can choose control or I can choose it succeeding. I can continue to control it into the ground, right? Yep. Or I can take my claws out of it and hand it to someone who might, they're not going to do worse than me. They might actually have a chance at succeeding with it. And what if we give that a shot?
Yeah. Like, at this point, I feel like I just don't have the mental bandwidth to dedicate to it.
For sure.
And I told them flat out, I was like, this isn't about you being like fully engulfed, entrenched in the engagement part of it. Like, you don't need to be answering comments. You don't need to be doing any of those things. I just need somebody to put the stuff out, just to be consistent. And if we can do that, then that is just going to push us down the line a bit further.
Yes.
And keep our name out in the marketplace.
Yes.
So beyond just showing stuff that you've done and promoting upcoming events, it's just, you got to be a part of the conversation. And if you're not talking, nobody's thinking about you. So that's where we're at, and that's what we need to fix. And this seems like the best way to do that.
Cool.
And the last one is the promo thing, which is not necessarily the hardest one, but the one that is going to take the most time, effort, and resources.
Well, you got to invest in some photography.
Yep.
You got to invest some time or money in some editing.
Yep. Or, well, specifically just like somebody shooting your stuff.
Got to get somebody there to shoot it. I've got these cameras that I shoot everything with, and I've got a husband of a co-front person who runs around with my Pocket 3, and we've made some pretty good stuff out of that, but the commitment to the time of getting it edited and cut down and versions of it for your different outlets, and, this full song versus this 2.5 minute highlight reel versus, there's a lot of work to do in that.
Yeah.
As evidenced by the fact that I've got a whole, external SSD drive full of RAWs that I've turned into nothing.
Yeah. I'm staring right now at 8 terabytes of nothing.
Yeah.
So, and this is like a decade's worth of nothing.
Yeah.
The challenge there is you can't do much with a decade of nothing, because while you can use some of that nothing for socials and that kind of thing, you really need new stuff.
Things have moved on.
Yeah.
Yep.
So new people, new lineup, new configuration, new
lighting,
material, new lighting, new everything. So we're at the point now where we kind of need what I would consider like an East Coast level, like quality promo.
Yeah.
So some sort of like studio style shoot with, more equipment than I've got.
Oh, and lighting way beyond what you're ever going to take to a gig.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So some of that, and then like some sort of production-y shoot where you've got solid lighting and sound and that kind of thing for the stage look, and then a compilation of you doing the thing that you do in front of people. I've got the stuff you do in front of people part pretty solidly, because that you can reuse that stuff over and over and over again, but the other components need to be updated with the quickness. And not to just be like totally vain, but frankly, I'm about 20 pounds lighter than I was in the last promo.
You want to highlight that? I'm feeling you.
So there's a little bit of that too.
100%.
So yeah, there's enough new around to really try and lean into that. Now the challenge is that in order to pay for this new stuff, you have to have business coming in. But if the intent of the promo is to bring the business in, there's this kind of, one hand washing the other situation that we've got to sort out.
You're gonna have to invest in yourself.
Well, and that's why I hope this Random Tuesday gig with the multinational corporation pans out, because that would put a pretty solid amount in the coffers in order to start that process.
Perfect.
So fingers crossed that all pans out for us. Now, there's a fourth thing that we haven't really talked about. And it's something that I spoke with a bit with Joey, our guitar player, he's another one of these guys. He's a project manager. He's just got the right mindset for these kinds of things. And he's like, what if we're barking up the wrong tree at this point? So it's not the wrong thought process. It's very much an idea to look at, okay, what if this product is not what the market is looking for anymore? And if it isn't, what is another product that we could kind of turn this into? Now, his point was saying, okay, if they've kind of if this band that shall not be named took over our spot in the 80s world, well, what about 90s? Fair question. We have a 90s imprint and we've done stuff with it, and it's not as busy, but we've kind of used the 80s project as the financial engine to drive these other projects. Well, what if the 80s project isn't the engine anymore? Do we pour the time and effort into the 90s thing to get it as solid and as polished as the 80s thing?
Yeah.
Would that be worth it? Fair question.
Fair question. Listen, as a product manager, I'll tell you my just instinct on this. The fact that this other band is having success means the market's not uninterested in 80s.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
It's not like the market's moved on. The question is, are you going to, in response to this competitive threat, are you going to cede ground? Are you going to abdicate, right? In a marketplace that clearly still wants to buy what you offer? Or are you going to develop your unique selling proposition such that you are in a better competitive position?
Right. Now, I would also argue that those things aren't necessarily mutually exclusive.
They're absolutely not.
There was a period of time where we kind of got into this mix where we're doing kind of 80s and 90s on the same night. We did this event called Fanny Pack Friday where we were kind of doing an 80s, 90s kind of melding, and it went really well. Mm-hmm. It was a very successful concept that, returned dividends for us. So I think there's some there.
Yes.
I'm not entirely ready to, throw the baby out with the bathwater, but it is a way to take what you're already doing and put a little sheen on it in the marketplace.
Yeah. Yeah. And standing up an 80s, 90s project, polishing, perfecting, versus whatever you need to do to get the 90s project as clean and perfect as your 80s project is, probably you could, you're closer on an 80s, 90s thing than just a purely 90s.
Arguably half as hard,
I would say.
Because the other part's already done for you.
There you go. So there's that. And it's also true that you double your nostalgia age group target by doubling the decades you're talking about.
Sure.
Makes you more sellable, makes you more
versatile.
Now,
the other argument is around the live band karaoke thing, because at this point, I think we're literally, as far as like future bookings, we're about 50-50 with like Era's band karaoke band situation.
Could you lean all the way into that and have that be your main thing?
We could. I just don't know if I want to.
I'm with you.
It's definitely...
It's hard.
It's weird because it's simultaneously less work and more work.
Right.
Because if your aim is to be a karaoke band, you don't have to necessarily play at the level of expertise and proficiency that an Eras band does, but you need to be able to think on your feet and be flexible.
Yeah, and there's a ton more crowd contact.
Yep. And so it changes the kind of work that you do. It changes the kind of like opportunities that present themselves. But weirdly enough, like the corporate live band karaoke like arena is very busy. There's a lot out there.
Good.
And so the thing for me is that it feels like it requires a lot more shed work outside of the gigs.
It does.
To get that product up and running.
The gear requirements
sustainable.
Are different, and the tech requirements are different, and the random jerks on your stage messing with your vibe is different. At some point, when I was doing my acoustic karaoke pretty regularly, I contemplating adding a what I call it, combat pay multiplier, right? Because it just people come up and make weird ass demands and drag their child up and insist it'll be so cute, and the kid's like sobbing, and I mean, oh my God, it's a mess. It's a mess interacting with people. People are horrible. So, and karaoke is going to be all about that. So you know, there's that to deal with too. As an extrovert, I'm saying. At karaoke, people are horrible. As
an introvert, it's literally my nightmare.
Much more, so much worse, 100%.
But it is one of those environments where magic can happen, and electricity is always present.
For sure. And I now have my acoustic karaoke regulars who make it great.
Right.
So that's pretty good.
This is a weird position to be in because, like, I don't want this to necessarily feel like a pity party or a woe is me thing. Like, what I'm saying is, like, we have all these opportunities in front of us and we're just not sure how to go with it. You know, like it does sound pretty ridiculous.
As always, your transparency and openness with me and with our audience is like, I mean, it's part of our vibe. It's part of our brand here in this podcast, is that we don't, pretend we have it all together when we clearly don't. Hopefully there are bands out there who are listening to this going, oh no. I've just kept the family friendly button on there in the podcast submission. But like, if you're listening to this and going, oh, I better deal with some stuff. Well, good. Mission accomplished. That's what this podcast is for. So,
but you know what you could do? You could flip this entire thing and be like, here's how you make a promo video that will sustain your sales for 7 years straight.
That's true. You've done great. You actually really did great. Let's not step over that. Yeah.
We've talked a lot about that promo video. It's just that you look at that guy and then you look at the guy who shows up. You're like, that's not the same guy.
Not that guy. What's happening?
That guy has a sparkle of youth in his eye, and this man
his
clearly
soul
does
has
not.
not been crushed by whatever's happened since 2019.
But his pants fit way better now.
Digging the pants.
So yeah, it's never fun to like look at your project from the outside and be like, it's not as good as it could be right now.
Right.
But the difference is that you can either ignore it and basically just let it peter out. And at this point, this project's been it just hit its 10-year mark. If it just kind of petered out,
look, that's long for a band.
You did it.
Yeah, that's
you
long.
did it.
Yeah, 100%.
And there's something to be said about like being satisfied with the work that you put in, but there's also something to be said about being kind of perpetually never satisfied, because it does compel you to adapt and adjust and innovate and continue. And that's the difference between bands that come and go and bands that have staying power.
You're just like your country. You're young, scrappy, and hungry.
That's what we're trying to do. So that's the deal. We're gonna spend this year retooling and hoping that with the rest of I don't think we're in any danger of losing stuff. Like I said, we're already booking out December and January of next year.
Right.
But it doesn't mean that we shouldn't put the time and effort into better ourselves and better position ourselves for the market. So that's what we're going to do.
Love it.
So I'm going to have to start looking at like studio spaces and or production companies that do this kind of work and see what it's going to cost. I thought through this a while ago and got a quote, and it wasn't an unrealistic quote. It was a lot of money, but I'm assuming that whatever it was back then, it's probably 20, 30% more than
I would think
it is now.
I would think tariffs probably aren't involved, but who knows?
No, but everything else is.
Yeah.
So unless I can call in some like serious favors, and who's to say, I mean, I probably could call a couple of favors in, but I don't have that much sway in this world. But onwards and upwards, that's basically where we're going here.
Love it.
So today is Cinco de Mayo, 2025. Let's circle back Cinco de Mayo, 2026.
Okay.
See how it went.
Good.
Because if nothing else, I mean, this is a community of people that is about accountability and, follow through. And so if things haven't changed or you're on socials, you're not seeing the stuff that you think you should, take us to task. That's what we're here for.
Yep.
So that's where we're at. If this struck a chord with you, let us know about it. Coverbandconfidential@gmail.com. Leave a comment if you're watching this on YouTube. We're all about this. Self-improvement, critical eye, tough love.
Honesty.
All the stuff. So that's what we're here to do. We're here to make you guys better, but also willing to, humble ourselves and expose ourselves to make ourselves better.
Right.
And that's all there is to it.